afternoon, everyone. We're going to start the prison board meeting. Controller DiBileo, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to call to order the Lackawanna County Prison Board meeting, Wednesday, September 21st at 12:32. First order of business, I would need a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion.
I need a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opportunity for the public to address the board on agenda items only.
Joan Hodawanit, Scranton. I printed out Controller DiBileo's report on the prison inmate and canteen accounts. I'm addressing this issue because on September 2nd, there was a letter printed in the Scranton Times suggesting that the investments that Controller DiBileo had requested and recommended on the canteen accounts, that there was a little bit of, shall we say, hanky-panky going on. And I wrote a response, but I want to address part of my response today. Looking at the cover sheet of this document, the inmate account is over $451,000. The canteen checking account is over $879,000. And there are two certificates of deposit totaling over $147,000. This is as of August 31st. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, but these are not government funds. These are inmate funds.
Yes, that's right, Joan.
Okay. So I had suggested before that these should be included in the county's annual independent audit. But I may have to modify that. It's my understanding that that county audit only can look at government funds. These are not government funds. I still think that the county would be wise and the prison board would be wise to start an annual independent audit separate from the county audit. This is a significant amount of money. And even though these are inmates, you still have a fiduciary responsibility to properly manage their money. I trust Gary. I trust him with my life. But God knows who's going to be his successor. Could be another communist for all we know. So what you want to set in motion, what you want to have is procedures and process in motion every year so that you can say, regardless of who the controller is, regardless of who the people are on the prison board, these figures are accurate. There is no mishandling of the inmates' money. Now, my memory isn't very good since I passed the big 7-decade point, but if I recall, I think we do the library system audit for 7 libraries for something like $21,500. So you should be able to get a reasonable price on an annual audit. But I think you need to do this so that the inmates, their families, and the general public are reassured that this amount of money is being handled properly. You're talking well over $1 million. So I simply make that as a recommendation, hoping you would consider it for future years. Thank you.
Thank you. Controller, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell Joan that this board would welcome an audit of that account. And absolutely, and thanks for backing me up on that letter to the editor, which you brought to my attention. And I am not an administrator of this account or a signer of the account. We're able to look at it, view it, make a report on it. So Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. Thanks for asking me those questions. Thanks.
We will look into that, Joe. Anybody else would like to comment on agenda items only? Okay, we have one motion to approve. The motion to approve all current payables for the Community Correction Center and the prison. Would someone like to make a motion to approve all
Motion.
current payables?
I'll make the motion.
I need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll start with the reports, and we'll start with Controller DiBileo.
Thank you, Sheriff. The Lackawanna County Controller's Financial Report of the Prison Inmate and Canteen Account. Canteen account is actually named the Inmate Welfare Account, and I'd like to point that out. And this is through August 31st of 2020. But prior to making my report, this report is covering the financial activity of the inmate and canteen accounts through the end of August, which I will give. However, at our last prison board meeting on August 17th, those members who were present voted unanimously to do what is best for the benefit, welfare, and education of our county inmates by investing $600,000 of the canteen account assets with the Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust for a 120-day period and a rate of 3.63% annually. That left a little over $250,000 in the checking account, which will cover our day-to-day operations that are necessary. The rate of return at the time of our meeting was 3.03 annually, but the $600,000 did not transfer into the Pliget account until September 16th, at which time the rate had increased to 3.63%. That investment will now earn $7,876 compared to where it was earning zero, and will now mature on January 26th. Recently, our $132,382.32 CD owned by the canteen account matured on September the 15th, and we are now in the process of investing that with the Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust any day now, also for a 120-day period. So the maturity date will be very close to the time that the $600,000 matures. So by the end of January, our canteen account investment of $732,382.32, which we will be recently have invested, will earn an additional $8,900 to be used for the benefit, welfare, and education of inmates. What is more, that is more responsible stewardship by this prison board, acting as fiduciaries for the canteen account. The last CD owned by the canteen account is $15,000 even. That matures in December. And I suggest that in September, we invest that $15,000 into the Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust prime rate of return of approximately 2.5%, but there's no time frame attached to that investment. And that would then be until January, at which time we can combine all of the canteen Pliget money together for a period to be determined by this board at our January 15th meeting. And with that said, my report through August 34th is as follows. The Controller's Office reviewed the prison inmate and canteen account reconciliations, which were prepared by the Prison Business Office for the month of August 2022, and found no discrepancies between the reconciliations and the bank statements. The balance in the inmate account was $451,785.42 as of August 31st of 2022. The balance in the canteen checking account was $879,748.27 as of August 31st, 2022. But it's not that now. It's slightly over $250,000. In addition, as of August 31st, 2022, the canteen account owned 2 certificates of deposit, one valued at $15,000 and the other at $132,371.08, totaling $147,371.08. During the month of August, $85,487.94 was paid by the canteen account for expenses which benefit county inmates, and the itemized details are attached to my report. And that concludes my report, Sheriff.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Controller DiBileo? Okay. I'm going to hit the rewind button briefly. I'm going to go back to the independent audit. I think it's appropriate that we make a motion to get the ball rolling, to request it, initiate the steps that we need necessary to conduct this independent audit on an annual basis.
Second.
So I'm going to make that motion that we do that. We get the ball rolling on that.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any questions? I hear nobody against, so we will start that process. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. DiBileo. Mr. McConaughey, you're up. Did we make a motion? Thank you. Let's go back to Mr. DiBileo's report. We need a motion to accept the controller's report. Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Mr. McConaughey, the Community Correction Center report.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a house arrest report for the month of August. Adult house arrest had 159 participants. Juvenile house arrest had 22. House programs revenues. House arrest had $54,588.62. Juvenile had $3,430. And the total for the month is $58,018.62. Year-to-date totals for both departments, $472,333.85. Programs expenses, $99,262.61. Programs violations were 49. No, I'm sorry. Programs completions were 49. Violations were 9. Programs warrants still, 1 for work release and 1 for house arrest. And the budget report overall, overtime's at 56%, expenses at 63%, and revenues at 72%. That's the minute in my order.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. McConaughey? Motion to accept the Community Correction Center report.
Motion.
Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Domenick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. McConaughey.
Have a good day.
Same to you. Okay, next we'll go to the Warden's report. Warden Betti.
Good afternoon, Board.
Good afternoon.
The in-house population, the average daily population for August 2022 was 756 inmates. 579 were county inmates. For the month, we averaged 653 adult males, 6 juvenile males, and 97 adult females. And the average daily population of U.S. Marshal detainees was 177. Our overtime and out-of-county budget reports are attached. Staffing update, currently our correctional officer numbers break down to 162 full-time on shift, 5 on workers' comp, 0 on FMLA, continuous FMLA, but 62 with intermittent FMLA, 7 on administrative leave, and 6 vacancies, current vacancies, for a total of 180 full-time officers. As of August 31st, revenue was at 66% and expenses were at 69%. And extraordinary occurrences, there were 5 in the month of August. On 8/2, a female inmate became upset with the results of her video court appearance, and she then became non-compliant with the staff's attempts to get her returned to her housing unit. The situation escalated to the point where she began kicking and spitting at staff. Responding staff were then able to place her in the emergency restraint chair for her own safety. On 8/3, a male being committed to the jail was exhibiting violent and aggressive behavior towards the committing agency. Physical struggle commenced just outside our booking door, and prison staff responded to assist with bringing this individual into the prison. Once inside the facility, this inmate continued struggling with staff, and this individual was then placed in the emergency restraint chair for his safety and for the safety of everyone involved. On 8/10, at approximately 12:05, a male inmate was distraught over the results of his video court hearing. Upon returning to his cell, it was observed that this individual wrapped his prison uniform around his neck and the stool located inside of his cell. Staff intervened, removed the uniform, and placed him in the emergency restraint chair. On 8/22, a female began to physically resist attempts to get her to shower in her housing unit. This individual is one with a known mental health issue, and the onset of her non-compliant behavior was sudden and without any apparent rationale. Responding staff were able to place her in the emergency restraint chair at approximately 8:35. On 8/25, a newly committed male started to display signs of an overdose. Staff then discovered a hypodermic needle on his person, and it was filled with a liquid. While attempting to retrieve the needle, the individual in question began to physically resist staff's efforts. Staff were able to subdue the individual and retrieve the needle, and he was then placed in the emergency restraint chair, and he was provided with Narcan, which almost immediately revived him. PREA, there were 2 PREA investigations completed in the month of August. Both were allegations of inmate sexual contact. One was deemed unfounded, and the other was deemed founded. Both PREA investigative reports have been forwarded to the District Attorney's Office for review, and this concludes my report.
Are there any questions for Warden Betti?
Yeah, actually, on some of your comments there about having put them in restraint chairs and different things, spitting and hitting officers, which was actually one of my questions, because that's been brought to my attention as well by some of the corrections officers, and why aren't we charging these with additional criminal charges then once they do these things? Not the mental, ones that have mental issues or something like that, but the ones that are just physically out of control and carrying on, throwing urine and feces and all the things that they do.
What we do is we do report the more serious events to the District Attorney's Office for review. Some events where I'm mentioning a person spit, we know from past experience if you spit on my suit, it's not going to be considered an assault. If it gets in my eye, then we could take a look at it. Yeah. So some things we don't report because of what we have learned over time, but other things are reported and looked at. And I honestly can't speak to what is investigated and if individuals are charged. I'm not really looking to track that aspect of it.
Right. Well, I just think it's
happen.
in the eyes of the corrections officers, it's probably a little more serious to them when it's being done to them. So I just think it's something that maybe should be looked into, and if they should be charged, they should be charged. I did have a second question on the subject of audits. You know, quite a while ago, I don't know, months ago, I asked, do an audit on our well path on the medical staffing and their versus our contract and what we're getting for our money. And I know I did ask you the other day, and you provided me with one report I have here it's from 6/26/22 to 7/30/22. And it's a staffing report. And what's concerning to me is our contracted hours, and this is all the different, dental assistant, dentist, LPNs, medical director, the whole list. Our contracted hours are 42 4,260 hours. Our actual that we received was 2,800. That's a negative of 1,458. That's concerning because, you know, if you did that, just basic numbers times $100 an hour and did that through the whole year, every month, that's $1.5 million just right there. So I think we need, I seriously think we need to look at, and PJ has some information there, it's just what I have. I think we should have an independent audit and look at this stuff and see if we're getting what we're supposed to be getting. You know, for the month of June, or this time period, we have a medical director, contracted hours, 120 hours. We have 0. A mental health professional, 300 hours are contracted. We have 0. So mental health professional, 200 hours, 0. That's not good. So this is a blatant abuse of the contract, and I seriously think it needs a good, hard look and be audited and see, you know, if they owe us money back. I understand they can't get employees, I understand that, but we're paying for that. So if we're paying for it and they can't provide it, then we should be getting a refund. So I'm requesting that we do an independent audit. I know how busy you get during the day. I don't know how you could physically do an audit yourself. I think we need to look at it. And, you know, then we look on costs above that with understaffing and without a medical director. And if there's something that happens to an inmate that's above the training of the person on staff, they got to go to the ER. Well, now there's 2 sheriff's deputies. They have to take this inmate to the ER. And
Actually, that's our staff.
Or, okay, well, your staff. So, okay, all right, right. So COs take them, so now you're taking 2 COs, and then you probably have to bring a couple in to cover. And then we get a bill from the ER on top of it. So it's just very concerning to me, and I think it needs a good, hard look.
I have no issue with that. I had mentioned at last month's prison board meeting independently. If the commissioners wanted to meet with me, that is fine. I can provide you with whatever I have. And at that point, and I'm mentioning the commissioners because the contracts between WellPath and the commissioners, and I know.
Well, this is a quick snapshot of that, but, I mean, we'd have to look at more, which I've asked you for more of that to get a better handle on it.
Right,
But
and I'm getting that.
I'm not convinced that we're going to have anything better when I look at more months of staffing and stuff like that. So that's just my recommendation as a commissioner.
Anybody else have anything for the warden?
I have a question. Sure. Warden, there are 6 correctional officer vacancies right now, and I'm just wondering if you have any officers in training currently.
Actually, I do. I have a list of individuals that I'll be seeking the board's permission for hiring. I have 12 part-time vacancies, 6 full-time vacancies. I don't have enough candidates to fill all 18 of those spots, but I have 10 candidates that I'm hoping that we potentially go into an executive session and can discuss them.
That's good to know because 38% of our correctional officer workforce is on interim family medical leave, and a full complement of officers will help offset the mandatory overtime that officers are required to work, which would be a big help.
That would be, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, based on Commissioner Chermak's concerns regarding WellPath, I feel it would be appropriate to amend the motion I made earlier and include the audit to include WellPath as well as the canteen fund. After, based on our concerns here,
An independent audit, correct?
to do an independent audit on an annual basis. Do we need a separate motion, or could we amend it? Okay, well, I'm going to make the separate motion that we start the initial steps to conduct an independent audit on an annual basis of WellPath.
I'll second that.
And I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Warden Betti.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to request an intermission because there are some personnel issues that we need to address as a board. We're going to be going into an executive session. Do we accept the warden's report?
So moved.
I'm sorry, I keep forgetting that. A motion to accept the warden's report.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we're going to go into an intermission, and we have to go into an executive session to discuss personnel matters. Thank you. And as I said, this is all based on personnel matters.
Right, well, I had several individuals that we briefly discussed in an executive session that I am proposing for hiring. I have, for purposes of a certain level of anonymity, if it's okay if I just utilize them and call them client or subject A, B, C, if that's fine with the board.
Yeah, that's fine.
Kind of protects their names at this point in time from anything, but subject A is a individual who applied that we're looking to hire. I don't know how to identify her in comparison to everybody else. If I could just go through the letters, or I could provide everybody with a kind of a cheat sheet. Okay,
Yeah, just
okay.
give us a little background on them more and your recommendation for them to be
Sure,
additionally
sure.
hired.
Subject A was interviewed, toured the facility. An interview team conducted that interview and voted in favor of recommending her for hire, and I'm in agreement with it. I was part of the interview committee with her. She appears to be an excellent candidate.
Is that the case with all of them? They've all been interviewed and gotten through this?
Yes, Commissioner. They've all been interviewed by an interview committee, recommended and approved.
So they go through the process of background checks. We should be able to act on them all at one time.
Yes, yes. So, I can cut to the chase and say, all 10 individuals that we discussed, I'll fall into that category, and I'd be looking for, I guess you could say, a contingency type of hiring of those individuals to ensure they pass the security background check and after vetting by our HR staff.
My next question, they were all thoroughly vetted between you and the HR department?
Yes. The drug test is part of the county's hiring process.
And just for further clarification, you're proposing 6 full-time hires, 4 part-time hires, but you interviewed other individuals who you were not recommending for hire, correct?
That is correct.
So through the vetting process, you've narrowed it down to these 10 individuals?
Yes. 6 full-time, 4 part-time. Yes.
Does anybody have any other additional questions for the warden before I make a motion? Okay, I am going to make a motion that we hire these individuals on a conditional basis pending the outcome of their criminal background check
Drug test.
and a drug testing. And if everything comes back clearing on that part, we'll hire them. So I'm going to make that motion that we do that.
Oh, okay.
Does anybody have any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
During the first 2 years I was commissioner, we would have the hire form with the application attached to it. So I'm not comfortable in conditionally hiring, so I'm just going to abstain from that vote. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Warden. The motion passes.
Sheriff, I also had employee A, who I've recommended termination of employment for. This was an employee who had underreported the conditions of police interaction with prison officials. Right. I was just going to, just that little sum up there, but I would be seeking approval of my recommendation for termination of that individual.
Okay, a motion based on the warden's recommendation to terminate employee A. I would need a motion for that, based on our
I'll
discussions.
make a motion.
Is there a motion?
Yes, I'll make a
I
motion.
need a second. All in favor?
Based on the warden's explanation to the board, I'll be voting.
Okay. We're going to be voting based on all his recommendations. Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
I abstain on the basis that I still believe that the board is not permitted to terminate under Title 61, and that rather that power is vested solely within the power of the commissioners under the Home Rule Charter and the PA County Code. Thank you.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Also, Sheriff, there was another employee B, terminate, a recommendation for termination. This one had to do with firearms qualification. Yes, I'm sorry, non-retention. It was for inability to maintain or obtain firearms qualification.
Okay. And she was given multiple attempts, correct?
18.
Okay. A motion to terminate employee 2 based on that.
Motion, I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
And I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Question.
On the question?
On the question, this employee would be welcomed back. This employee would be welcomed back upon being able to complete that firearm training.
Yeah, matter of fact, I would encourage her to go and get long-term training and give it another shot. We liked her.
So we could revisit this issue if she's successful in being more proficient with the weapon.
Absolutely, sure.
Okay. I'm okay with that. I'm sure the board is. On the question, anyone else? All in favor? Aye.
I abstain on the same basis as previously stated.
And our third subject was, I'm seeking the board's approval for a certain level of discipline that we discussed about a staff member.
Okay. We know the background on this employee 3.
I'll make the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
I abstain on the same basis as previously stated.
Okay, thank you. Motion's passed. Do you have anything else for us, Warden?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. I know we approved your report. Okay, opportunity for the public to address the board. When you come up, please give us your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Abigail Mikowski. I wanted to address an issue. So, during the first council meeting, prison board council meeting that I attended, it was said that any PA Stands Up was invited to speak. And during the Board of Electors meeting, it was then said that the reason why the Board of Electors could not approve the referendum was because it had to go through the prison board. I would like to state that appropriate communication for invitation for an opposing council or party that is coming to speak at this type of event is not a texting bank. So the communication of invitation came through a voting registry texting bank. That means that they were not officially invited and actually didn't know it was going on. And the way that it made it seem, at least to people that were listening, was that they were not coming to upheld and speak on the issues that they wanted to speak on. I think that that is unfair, and that if you had wanted to hear it, it should have happened through appropriate administration. Secondly, audits, medical audits. Through the state of Pennsylvania, you would fail. If Pennsylvania state audited you for mental care, medical care, you would fail miserably. I worked for a psychiatrist. So honestly, he's not supposed to be doing audits. That comes through nursing, healthcare staff. I did prior authorizations, audits, things of those nature. Those come through the healthcare staff. And appropriate handling of an overdose is not putting them in a restraint chair. That is actually psychiatric care, which means that there was negligence there because there was nobody who was actually properly trained to use that. So I would like to ask that in the future, we use the appropriate administrative staff and that we handle ourselves and conduct ourselves like this is the boardroom. And that when communication is made, it's done properly. Nobody would want to work in a place where there's mass chaos. And hiring 10 new employees, how are you going to properly train them and take away from your already shorthanded staff that are working in chaos, all 10 of them, without causing more chaos? Also, if he had reported anything that was done, there would have been further investigation, which in any court of law for a charge means that both parties are heard. So there are a lot of areas here, and I think they begin mostly in administrative staff, that you need that. Medical assistants, nurses, they do that administrative work. He cannot be handling audits and handle the responsibilities of prison. The doctors actually never see the audits.
Who can't be handling the audit?
Well, audits for medical care, they go to the medical assistants and the nurses and the medical director. That's who handles that. So when I got audits or when I got prior authorization requests, which if people were being medicated, you would need that for most insurances. It never hit the doctor. It never hit the head. It always hit the administration so that things could be properly handled by the directors themselves, their own responsibilities. And just like you have the prison board that handles this, you have the board of electors that handles something else, all medical procedures are handled the same. You don't go directly to the doctor when you have an issue, you come through me.
Well, this board will take that matter under advisement, okay?
Thank you. And
And we'll be directed accordingly.
You would fail, state. It would be bad. It would be a massacre from what he spoke.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Brenda Johnson, and the reason I'm here today, I'm here as a citizen. I'm a part of PA Stands Up, but I'm also a citizen that's concerned about the petition that we received, that we went out on the street and got the signatures on. You already know we walk the streets and we obtain the signatures to reform solitary confinement, or whatever we want to call it, the restrictive housing unit in the Lackawanna County Jail. You already knew it was over 90 degrees on the days that we were out there. We obtained 13,665 signatures, and we only needed 8,396 signatures. You already know that the voters really, and I'm talking to voters every day, are upset and they don't understand why their signatures and why their petition, which was their signature, does not matter. Since we already know these things, then I will go in and ask you to please consider what we're looking at for the ballot initiative, reform. I understand that you're telling me the restrictive housing unit, what it does, but from actually talking to people on the street that had been in solitary confinement, is what they called it, because they were in the Lackawanna County Jail, they have a totally different vision and view of what it is and what it does. And to consider this, our referendum was asking for, instead of 23 hours a day, that they be down to 20 hours a day. We were asking for you to consider mental health providers that would assess and report the duty, the number of days that people were in, their race, and also the age and their sex, and the reason that they were held in solitary confinement in a report. Between the people that I personally talked to in reference to the restrictive housing unit and the way they described it and the way you describe it is totally different. And I'm saying the way it was described from the last meeting that we were at. Okay. And I ask you, have you put yourselves in their shoes? And I read the current rule that says that the warden says they can stay in up to 21 days and 1 hour outside of the cell. The question I ask, is that humane? Most of them that are in that situation experience a trauma when they're released back into society, and they will be released in the majority of cases back into our society. Those that are the experts in that area, and I'm not one of them, they said that it causes trauma, fear, shock, isolation, and even more. And my final point, why are we afraid for the voters to make a determination on an amendment that 13,000 people signed? Thank you.
Excuse me, Warden, would you come up to the podium, please?
Yes, sir.
Would you please define solitary confinement, restricted housing, and what is the threshold that has to be made in order to be put in the status? What has to happen for them to be put in this?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. I mean, basically, it is a difference of opinion and difference of definition of solitary confinement. By my definition of solitary confinement, and practically everybody I know in society, you have visions of Cool Hand Luke, the movie Cool Hand Luke, in a hot box out in the yard. We don't have that. We don't have solitary confinement. That's a misnomer. We don't use that term. We haven't used that term in my career, my 30-year-plus career at the jail.
What's the term you use?
We have a restrictive housing unit. We have things like administrative custody, protective custody, disciplinary custody, and some of them are self-descriptive. I mean, protective custody is an individual who needs to be protected or requests to be protected for the rest of the prison population. There are restrictions on there because of our need to ensure that individual safety. Unfortunately, we're not like a state or a federal facility where we have what seems like an unlimited number of funds. We're a county jail, and that county jail is reliant upon county taxpayers, and the commissioners are the ones who are setting things up as how much money goes to this department, how much money goes to that department. It's very, we don't have a large facility that has a extremely large employee base. We do have 180 full-time correctional officers, and that does seem like a lot. Take a state prison at our size and you'll see that the numbers are a lot bigger. And they might have the ability to individually give 100 and some individuals several hours out of their cells a day. We have a duty to protect first and foremost the safety of the individuals.
Warden, I have a question. So you're saying Lackawanna County Prison does not have solitary confinement?
By my definition, no. I understand that NEPA stands up has a different definition.
Well, can you explain what you think is the closest thing to solitary confinement that they
The
are?
closest thing we have is just protective custody and disciplinary custody. Well, disciplinary custody, I'll use that. An individual has a minor or a major infraction, but it's serious enough that he is ordered to do X amount of days in disciplinary custody. And I'm saying he, it could be women as well. You know, we have females at our facility as well, but an individual is ordered to do X amount of days in restrictive housing, disciplinary custody, whatever term you want to use. When they're in that situation, they're down there with other individuals who have also created misconducts. According to Title 37 law, which is the law that governs county facilities in the state of Pennsylvania, they're entitled to 1 hour out of their cells a day for recreational purposes only.
They're typically not alone?
No, they would have, well, they could be, most of them want to be alone, but you have cells on each side of you, you have cells above you or below you. So it's not like it's a cell that's over in that corner all by itself. But it's also, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's not like you wouldn't be necessarily celled alone. That could occur. And sometimes you might prefer that.
How about meals, Warden? How many meals do they get a day?
3 square meals a day. Aramark is our food service provider. They have a registered dietitian on staff that certifies every meal. So,
Medical as well?
right, we have a medical department. They do routine rounds, sick calls. On top of that, we have a phone that's available. It's on its own little, it's like if this was on wheels and we can wheel it from cell to cell. So we have a phone that's available. We have a law library in a cart so that they don't lose access to the library. I'm not going to, they lose some privileges. They're in disciplinary custody.
How long of a period is that typically?
That's hard to say. I started when I heard, when I started getting noise I was hearing about this group, and I don't mean anything offensive about that, I thought of exactly that. So I started tracking it, loosely tracking it, and it seems like your average length of stay, when you look at everybody that goes in there, how long they're there, it's about 14 days. I mean, there are some people that go down there for 7 days. There are some that go down there for 21 and commit a new offense and end up doing more than 21. But it seemed to average out around 14 days is your average length of stay down there in our restrictive housing unit under disciplinary custody.
Would you consider that cruel and unusual punishment, inhumane punishment?
If I did, I wouldn't do it. I also recognize that some folks might think that is, and who am I to say? But I don't think it's cruel and unusual. I have a lot of contact with a lot of other facilities. It's more the norm, at least in the state of Pennsylvania, that I'm aware of.
So if I'm understanding you right, this status is used for disciplinary, protective, or medical reasons,
Yeah.
for the most part.
For the most part, yeah. Yeah, there are times, Sheriff, where we have an individual who should be in protective custody but keeps getting into fights with other individuals in protective custody. And that individual might get placed into administrative custody because he can't get along in the protective custody
And
status.
they are not being deprived of any of their necessities?
No.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions on the board regarding this?
I just wanted to say that I think I would speak for the board as a whole when I say that no one on this board is in favor of any inhumane practice at the Lackawanna County Prison. We just would not be in favor of that.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions for the warden on this subject matter?
I do, sir, just have one question.
Oh, hold on 1 minute, ma'am. I'm just directing it toward the board members, and you're more than welcome to come up. Okay,
Thank you.
sure. Thank you, Warden.
I'm sorry. My one additional question, we're asking for the hours instead of 23 hours a day to go down to 20 hours a day. And it just seems like we're asking for the world. And I would appreciate, please, if we're not referred to derogatorily. We have been the last 3 meetings, because I've listened if I wasn't there. No, we have.
We're
Our
not referring to
organization.
derogatorily, ma'am.
Yeah, well, we
are
would
not.
refer to the way the warden refers to our organization is very derogatory. And we're just concerned citizens that are standing up for those that cannot stand up for themselves. In America, if somebody doesn't stand up for somebody that can't stand up for themselves, why was I a soldier? Why do we send people to war? It's for democracy. It's for each other, to stand up for each other. So I'm asking for, instead of 23 hours a day, is it possible to go down to 20 hours a day? Is it possible for them to have a report that they write the name of the person, how many times they've been in there, okay, for what reason just they've been in there, and their age, their sex, and their race. So just so we can trace the pattern. That's all. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome, ma'am. Warden, will you come back up, please? What's your position on this request from reducing the confinement or the restrictive housing from 23 hours to 20?
Well, Sheriff, thanks for calling me up. I would like to take a quick opportunity to apologize. I certainly didn't mean to come off as derogatory towards any person or any group. Secondly, that could be very difficult. We have protective custody today. We have 103 inmates, individuals.
Okay.
Disciplinary custody, we're probably in the mid-40s. Administrative custody, we're probably in the mid-30s. It's a lot of individuals. We have about 800 in-house, but I would say you add them all up, we might be talking about 20 to 25% of our population falls into a category that I'm not opposed to it. I want to get people out as much as I can. I want to do it as safely as I can, too.
So this is a safety issue, why you're reluctant to do this?
Absolutely.
And for no other reason than it being a safety issue, for the number of people in this status. You don't have enough manpower to oversee what's going on there.
Absolutely. It's always been my theory to keep individuals that are incarcerated there. I know they're temporary. I want to keep them as busy as I could possibly keep them to make that time go by without any issues, as best as I can go by. That's always my goal.
So Warden, you're saying
question?
4 hours down to 20 might be difficult for the reasons you explained. Would something in between be possible?
I would say, especially with the protective custody individuals, that's very possible. We did it in the past. We had a serious increase in the number of assaults. And so we went back to the way we always did it. So we've done it. It didn't work out successfully. I don't have any issue with giving them another shot.
Well, why don't we revisit this at the next board meeting? You can report on if the numbers have come down as far as the people that are in that status, and maybe we can go from there.
I think
possible.
that would be a fair start with our protective custody individuals.
Any questions from the board? Hold on, folks. Thank you again. This lady, come up here. I don't think we heard from her yet.
By the way, Mr. Chairman, the decision for it not going on the ballot does not rest, Mr. Attorney Ruggiero, with this board, correct?
That is correct, Controller DiBileo. The group had presented their concerns at the election board meeting, which was probably about 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. We had outlined at that time publicly the reasons why the election board decided the way they did and not granting the application or the referendum be placed on the November ballot. And then yesterday I had authored correspondence in response to correspondence that I believe was presented at the last commissioners meeting in Old Forge. And that again just simply outlined the reasoning and memorialized in writing what I had said at the previous meeting. That decision about whether it goes on the ballot in November would be a decision that solely rests with the election board. The election board for this year and in any year in which the commissioners are not running is the 3 commissioners. So that's who comprised the election board, and that was the reasoning why they decided the way they did. But to your question, yes, the decision about whether it gets placed on the ballot does not lie with this board. I did instruct the organization and the group, though, that their concerns, the election board's decision was not a decision, and I apologize for having my back to you. I'm this way. The decision was not a decision on the merits of their petition or on the merits of the substance of their petition. It was simply based on the law. And I had indicated at the election board meeting that it was and is admirable that there are 13,000 signatures on that, or 13,000 and change signatures on that petition. and I encouraged them to appear at the election board meeting, at the prison board meeting, which is why I think they're here today, or partly the reason, and raising the concerns they have been raising.
But in short, it's beyond our scope whether or not that question goes on the referendum, on the ballot, correct?
Well beyond the scope and duties of this particular board, the prison board. You're without authority to make that decision.
Just so everybody's clear on that.
Legally, yeah, the law, and
Legally.
the Home Rule Charter and the third-class county code outline who the election board is, who the election officials are, and that decision-making process that the election board has to go through, all of which I had previously outlined, and again, which I outlined in my correspondence from yesterday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that
Thank
help
you.
answer your
Thank you,
question,
Mr.
Controller?
Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, I saw a few hands up. Somebody wants to come up?
I apologize. I have to excuse myself. I have a 2 o'clock meeting.
Hello, my name is Alec Walker-Serrano. I'm a member of NEPA Stands Up. I just wanted to read 2 definitions of what solitary confinement is for the benefit of the board, Warden Betti, and everyone who's here today. The first is from Cornell University. Solitary confinement, also known as isolation or administrative segregation, is when a prisoner is placed in a cell away from other prisoners with limited contact to others. Prisoners are usually placed in solitary confinement as a form of internal discipline for serious and minor infractions. And the UN definition is confinement of prisoners for 22 hours or more a day without meaningful human contact. So I think that by definition, we are using solitary confinement at the Lackawanna County Prison. And I think it would be of benefit to the people working there and the people who are inmates there if the people running the prison understood what solitary confinement is and that they are using it. There is a plethora of research out there showing that solitary confinement does not work. It increases recidivism rates, it increases instances of aggression, it increases mental health problems. It is not a good way for us to actually improve the safety of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, we're going to take the matter under advisement. Does anybody have any questions other than what they feel the definition of solitary confinement is? Because I don't want to see redundancy here. We are going to take the matter under advisement.
Hi.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. My name is Holly Van Wert. I am a Lackawanna County resident. I'm the lead organizer of NEPA Stands Up. I'm the petitioner of the ballot initiative to limit the use of solitary confinement in Lackawanna County. I am here today to call on you, the members of the Lackawanna County Prison Board, to make the necessary life-saving improvements for the health and safety of those housed in your prison. Over the last several months, NEPA Stands Up has been in frequent contact with at least 20 people held inside the prison, all of whom shared details of their experiences in solitary. The accounts were consistent in their cruelty. We heard about the withholding of medication for serious physical and mental health issues, unsafe and inedible food, failure to provide access to programming or proper out-of-cell time, and periods of extended isolation. Because it doesn't matter what you choose to call it. Keeping a person isolated for 22 hours or more a day without meaningful human contact is the definition of solitary confinement, and that is what is happening inside Lackawanna County Prison. Warden Betti just told us that 25% of the people housed in Lackawanna County Prison are in some kind of restricted housing. We know that solitary confinement creates and worsens physical and mental health issues, including anxiety, depression, paranoia, obsessive thoughts, cognitive disturbances, post-traumatic stress disorder, hypertension, heart attack, increased suicide rates, and premature death. Our referendum to limit the use of solitary confinement in Lackawanna County Prison seeks to limit the use of solitary confinement, capping the number of hours one can be kept in isolation to 20 hours, not to exceed 14 days, and limiting emergency solitary confinement to no more than 24 hours. As we continue our work of bringing this important issue to the voters in November, I would like to give you the opportunity today to institute a referendum as prison policy. These necessary changes to how Lackawanna County exercises restrictive housing will increase public safety, as individuals held in solitary confinement have a 20 to 25% higher recidivism rate than people held in less restrictive housing, and it would save taxpayer money. Warden Betti just spoke about how Lackawanna County Prison is funded by taxpayers. It costs less to house an individual in general population than it does to house someone in restrictive housing. And the taxpayers have earned the right to vote on whether this practice should continue in their community. As we have asked for the will of 13,665 Lackawanna County voters to be respected by our elected officials, our incarcerated neighbors are continuing to endure isolation and inhumane treatment inside Lackawanna County Prison. I am urging you today to do what nearly 14,000 Lackawanna County residents have called on you to do, and institute a referendum as prison policy in full today. Thank you.
Thank-
I can provide them with the names and inmate numbers redacted.
Okay, please do that. Again, we're taking these matters under advisement, and I think it was mentioned earlier, nobody here wants to see the inmates treated inhumanely. Nobody wants to see that happen. So we will take these matters under advisement, and we will take them seriously, and we'll move from there.
I, for one, would like to visit the prison to take a look at the restricted area that we're talking about.
I'll join that. I'll go out myself as well.
I would also like to visit.
Microphone, please come up to the microphone.
Is it possible for one or a few of us to be in attendance of that tour?
That would be a question for the warden. He's in charge of the prison as far as security. That would be a question for him.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? About anything unrelated to what we spoke about already? I think we all have a clear understanding of your position, and you have a clear understanding of ours.
Good
How are you,
afternoon. My name is Phil Yeviks, and I'm here, a resident of Scranton, here today as a representative of the Scranton Area Ministerium. I'm proud to represent the faith communities on the board of the Lackawanna County Reentry Task Force, and the Ministerium appreciates the recognition that faith communities can contribute to this important work, making our county safer and more productive. We're pleased that Mother Barnes and the people of St. Luke's Episcopal Church are hosting our peer-to-peer support group sponsored by the task force. And I recognize that reentry is beyond your direct jurisdiction, but if you're interested, I can share information about our peer-to-peer group because it does directly affect recidivism and ultimately the prison costs. My main purpose today is to address the provision of religious services at the Lackawanna County Prison and the need for professionally trained chaplain services at our county jail. Prison ministry has been a concern of the ministerium long before I got involved, almost 12 years ago now, and we continue to monitor the situation closely. You're all aware that Reverend Doug Posgate and others, the role that they played in bringing these concerns to the prison board over the last year. We're pleased to learn that religious services have been resumed at the jail, and we expect that this will include all the services that had been provided before the pandemic restrictions. We want to acknowledge the very generous and efficient initiative from Jubilee Ministries to provide chaplain services at the Lackawanna County Prison and the impressive efforts they have already made in providing for the spiritual welfare of those being held there. We have shared with the representatives of Jubilee Ministries our support for their efforts and our eagerness to cooperate with them in any way possible. And I'm not sure if all of the board members are familiar with the Jubilee Ministries' recent publicity about that, but I could provide an electronic copy if you'd like to be aware of it. This is something that they circulated in the community, and it highlights their one full-time and two part-time employees and the services that they are providing. We remain convinced, however, that a jail the size of Lackawanna County Prison requires the appointment of a full-time, professionally trained and certified prison chaplain. Situations such as informing inmates of the death of a loved one or helping staff and inmates cope with an unexpected death require the 24/7 availability of someone with the specialized pastoral training. We have prepared a document providing background on the history of the chaplain at Lackawanna County Prison, various standards in use for certifying prison chaplains, and the reason why a professionally trained chaplain is needed in our county jail. We continue to gather more information for that document, but we would be happy to share it with the current draft at whatever time the board thinks it might be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Any member or others' business? Motion to make adjournment.
Motion.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.